Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session for Writing for Social Media. My name is Daryl, and I'm a trainer for the free skills training program, the Google Digital Garage. A little bit about myself before we kick off today's session. I come from an incredibly diverse background within sales, recruitment, hospitality, learning and development, and of course within tech. But I dedicate the majority of my time to help close the digital skills gap that is so prevalent in our world today. But enough about me. I'm actually very, very fortunate to have Anna with us here today, who is also a Google Digital Garage trainer and will be moderating today's chat. She will be in the chat, ready and waiting for any questions or any queries, any emojis, anything you'd like to throw her way. But in order for you to get involved with today's chat and to get involved with today's session, because today is an interactive session, there's a couple of housekeeping tips. First and foremost, if you're having any problems hearing me or seeing me today, please go ahead and refresh your browser. It normally irons out any potential problems. Next up, we love questions, we love queries, we love emojis, we love all types of engagement within the chat. In order for you to get involved with today's chat, you would be required to have a YouTube account. Relatively easy to get set up. Once you're all set up, you'll be able to fire over those questions to myself and Annie throughout today's session. Just to let you know, we will be pausing throughout today's session for any particular questions. But as the session's going along, don't be shy. Pop in your questions, your queries. There's no such thing as a silly question or a silly comment. And please keep in mind, there could be something that you pop in the chat today that may resonate with somebody else that is watching today's session. Next up, this particular live training is part of a broader offering from the Google Digital Garage. So I hugely encourage you to click in the link in the description below. It'll take you to the website and give you a plethora of information, online courses, and many, many more live webinars very similar to this one. Next up, and something that could help you from an accessibility point of view, if you would like to have the closed captions, in other words, the subtitles for today's session, all you'll need to do is hover over your video and with your desktop or your laptop, and a little menu or overlay will pop up from the video. You want to find the gear cog. Once you click onto that gear cog icon, you'll be able to select closed captions or subtitles in English, where you'll be able to follow along just a little bit more effectively. But now that the housekeeping tips are out of the way, I suppose let me just remind you with the chat. If you're viewing us through a desktop or a laptop, the chat should be on the far right-hand side. If you're viewing us through a mobile device, the chat is most likely just below us. And I've already seen tons and tons of hellos within the chat, and I'm going to get to that very, very shortly. But a big, big thank you to everybody that's getting involved so far. So what are we going to be covering over the next 60 minutes or so? Well, pretty much always, in these sessions, break it down to 3 basic steps. Number 1, we're going to jump into defining your brand on social media. And as we're going throughout today's session, I really, really hope that everybody's got a pen and pad ready to go to take down some notes and really start thinking about your own business, your own charity, or whatever you have going on at the moment. I'd really like you to put yourself in your shoes and start thinking about how you can take the advice and the tips and tricks from today's session and apply it to your business. Then we're going to jump into writing for social media, and we're going to look at how we can handle potential complaints or bad reviews. And I'm going to take that from different angles and hopefully, I suppose, answer those in the correct way. Then last but not least, we're going to jump into the tools for content marketing. Jam-packed with lots of information, but just to let you know, sometimes these trainings can be a little bit overwhelming. This is an hour with tons of information. Just to let you know, there will be a recording of this particular session that'll be available for approximately 24 hours. All you'll need to use is the same link that you used today to join today's session, and you'll be able to rewind and fast forward and really absorb the information at your own pace. Besides from that, if maybe you're a small business or charity in the UK and you're struggling, or maybe you just need a few more ideas, or maybe you're looking for a little bit more of a one-to-one help, well, fear not. Google is offering free one-to-one mentoring sessions to small businesses and charities throughout the UK. I am super proud to be a part of this, along with many other digital experts, including our wonderful moderator, Anna. We're both and other digital experts are ready and waiting to help you. So please go ahead and take down that link, which is g.co/UK mentoring. And I really, really hope that we see you in sessions in the future. But before we jump into today's session, I want to go see if there's a couple of hellos, and there are. We've got Asanya from Manchester. Big, big welcome to you. It's very, very familiar name. We got Jackson calling in from Poland, Cześć, Yakshamash. That's pretty much all I know when it comes to Polish. We got Mukat calling in from the Philippines. Absolutely love the Philippines. I've been to Manila and a few other places. We got Lee Maria calling in from Cheshire, from UK. Big welcome to yourself. We got Kit Kat from the Philippines as well. We got Imam calling in from Afghanistan. We really have an international audience today, and we've even got MC Bright calling in from Nigeria. Really a fantastic international audience. Hopefully you've got another one, Simplified, calling in from India. Keep them coming in. Keep Anna on her toes. Say hello. Pop in your emojis. Pop in your questions. Pop in your queries, because that's what today's session is all about. We want to hear from you because you make these sessions come to life. We've got Pet Shop calling in from Wolverhampton. We've got Simplified Seema here as well. So keep those coming in, and Anna will hopefully respond to you very shortly. Let's jump into the first part, which is define your brand on social media. Taking a big breath in, because we're going to start from the basics today, and we're going to start thinking, regardless if you've got a developed business, you're just starting off, you're a freelancer, you're a charity. I think that's all what we should do, is go back to the basics and start thinking about what can we do from a brand perspective. So how do we define your brand on social media? And what I really love to start off today's session with is a question, and a question that I want to put out to all of you, which is going to be, what is a brand tone of voice? Now, when I first heard this, I was like, brand, voice, tone, do they really go in the same sentence? Not so sure. So put your interpretation of what you think a brand tone of voice is. Pop it into the chat. Myself and Annie would love to hear your thoughts on this, because this is really going to be, again, going back to the basics and understanding, okay, we're writing for social media, but what's the purpose behind this? What is our brand about? How do we exude this brand tone of voice per se? So what is a brand tone of voice? Pop it into the chat while I see if there's any couple of more hellos. We've got Puspa Gopal, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, calling in from Singapore. Wow, we really do have an international audience today. Nadeem with lots of smiley faces. Absolutely love those big smiling faces. So Sanjay, thank you so much for popping into the chat. The first answer for what is a brand tone of voice, it's how a brand communicates. Love that. So anyone else got any ideas? Again, there's no such thing as a wrong answer right here. We're ideating ideas and going back to the basics. Leah, with a question mark, please don't ever doubt yourself, but you put brand book. Love that. So Leah, brand tone of voice, maybe how you communicate, your brand book, in other words, your brand guidelines. We've got Red Reef, how to approach customers or potential customers. Definitely, because when we're approaching our customers, we need to have some sort of a brand tone of voice per se. And we're going to put this in perspective very shortly. We've got MC Bright, communication and services you render. Okay, so maybe it's a combination of quite a few things. But what I really want to go back to is think about your brand tone of voice is how would you behave? How would you respond in certain situations? Or maybe even how would you dress? Now, these may sound some very generic questions. We've got a few more. We've got Neil calling in, saying in the way the brand interacts with the customers. We've got Puspa calling in, how does the brand talk to the customers, capturing their feelings, and what do we connect with the customer from Simplified? Absolutely fantastic answers. But let's think of it from a perspective of the personality of your brand and your business. So if we think about a brand tone of voice, we want to think about the personality of your brand or a business. So to explain it in simple terms, it's the way your brand or business would speak if it was a real person. So imagine you have a brand. How does that person speak? How is that person going to communicate? How is that person going to greet? How is that person going to say goodbye as a real person? Now you may be thinking, Daryl, well, this doesn't really make much sense. Well, let's put this in perspective and give you a couple of celebrities that you may be familiar with. We got one more from Nancy. Tone of voice is unique of the product and the footprint, the niche. Love that. Red Reef with grit or kindness, for example, great examples and absolutely fantastic contribution within the chat, because myself and Annie and many of us may even learn a couple of things from you today. So keep that coming in. We've got a couple more. We've got Bill Nye. Anybody heard of Bill Nye, the science guy? Could be. He's informed, he's approachable, and he's goofy. Then we have another celebrity, which is George Clooney, which is very sophisticated, very laid back, and very smooth. Then we have Beyonce, who's incredibly strong, very empowering, and alluring. So another question I'd like to put out there is, what is the point of developing a brand personality online? I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you here today. Feel free to answer them as you wish. But there's another question I'd like to follow up on, which is, what's the point of developing a brand personality online? Pop that into the chat. Myself and Annie would love to know. But when we're thinking about a brand tone of voice, we want to think of it as a real person. And if we're thinking of a real person, it could be Bill Nye the Science Guy, it could be the sophisticated George Clooney, it could be Beyonce. Now, when you're thinking about your own brand or your own business, maybe you can think about your own celebrity that you can associate your brand with, or that encompasses what you're all about and how you would speak. So a great question that's popped in there. We got Neil, who's chosen Johnny Depp. Strong, innocent, and trustworthy. Neil, you are on the money there. Does anybody else have any favorite celebrities and can associate those 3 words to that celebrity? Now, this small, simple exercise is getting our minds thinking about your brand and your tone of voice and how you're going to project that as if you're a real person. Because when we are writing for social media, this needs to be at the forefront of your mind almost every time you're going to write for social media. So absolutely love that. Let's move on to the 4 steps to help you develop your brand tone of voice. So again, please everybody take a pen and pad ready to go, because what I'd like you to do is think about your own business. Think about yourself. Think about your brand as if it was going to speak as a real person. And I want you to follow along with these 4 steps. Couple more coming in there from Mukat. Jeremy Rena, grit, no nonsense, and practical. Oh, Jeremy is definitely down my avenue, because that's what I look for, which is going to be an important factor very shortly on if you've defined your celebrity or your brand, then we need to think about the audience. But I don't want to get ahead of myself right now. Let's go jump into step number 1, which is brand values. What does your brand or business stand for? Again, pen and pad ready out. Even if you're just writing down a few words or you're writing down a few ideas, but before you start thinking about your tone of voice that appears in a written form, you need to wind back and think about what your company values are. What is it that you stand for? Maybe it's giving great, excellent customer service. I think we all want to do that, but maybe that's what you stand for. Perhaps maybe you provide the best atmosphere for productivity, or maybe you give unbiased reporting. Now, there's multiple things on what you can think of what your brand stands for. But again, an exercise that I'd like you to do is pop into the chat, what is your brand and what do you stand for? And I'd also like you to write that down, because that is step number 1, and it's incredibly important before we move on to step number 2. So we got another one from Kylie, uniqueness. Love that one, because hopefully you're taking down these words and keeping them aside. We got Kakuya. I believe we've seen your name a few times, so thank you so much for coming back to these Google Digital Garage sessions. We welcome you every single time, and thank you so much for getting involved. Kakuya, hopefully we're pronouncing your name correctly. We've got sophisticated, wise, empowering, and I can't think of a celebrity, because maybe you are the celebrity, Kaku. That's perfectly okay. That doesn't have to be mandatory. I'll absolutely love that. So what does your brand stand for, and what are your values? Take some time to think about that and pop into the chat. While you are doing that and you're thinking, well, Daryl, I don't really know. Well, let's give you a couple of examples. Number 1, we have Nico's Pizzeria and we have Hathaway Legal. And remember, as I'm going through these businesses, think about your own. Think about your own brand. But we have Nico's Pizzeria is all about making quality pizza with fresh ingredients, providing excellent customer service, and fast and reliable home delivery or takeaway. So think about how easy it is going to summarize what your brand stands for and how you're going to project this. We have Hathaway Legal, who's on the other scale of dedicate the highest level of diligence to each case. We believe that our clients deserve a quick response. We only hire top lawyers who have trained in prestigious institutions. So what these 2 companies have done is they've taken a few minutes aside and thought to themselves, what is it that we are? Because there's lots of pizzerias out there and there's lots of legal advisors out there, but What makes you different and how you're going to stand out is going to be your brand tone of voice that we spoke about at the very beginning. So let's jump into step number 2, which is going to be, how would you describe a core member of your audience? Now, if you come to any of my trainings or the trainings that I deliver, is that I have a huge emphasis on audience, on customers, on who are your participants, who are your customers. Without an understanding of who your customers are, you're going to kindly niddly diddly try a few different things. So number 1, you've established what does your brand stand for. Maybe you've just started with 3 simple words, which a few of you have popped into the chat. Even Nadim have just popped in one, which is helpful and friendly. 2 for now. Nadim, try think of one more. And this simple 3 sentences is going to allow you to start to construct your brand tone of voice based off these 3 words. Only once you've established what your brand stands for, you can move on to step number 2, which is building a pen portrait. Now, when it comes to a pen portrait, you may be thinking, well, what is that, Daryl? Well, what I'd like you to start thinking about is creating a vivid picture of who your audience is. You got to understand who your brand is. Now we need to understand who your audience is. Now, there's multiple ways in which you can do this. You could do a pen portrait. You could do an avatar. You can do a persona. All of these are very similar in their own way by explaining who your audience is. Now, creating a pen portrait, I'm not going to lie, is slightly time consuming. It is going to take a little bit of your time in order for you to establish what this pen portrait is. And it may sound silly, but the more detail, the better. For example, what if you know their pet's name? Maybe you know, how do they get around? Do they drive? Do they go by car? Do they know what their favorite food is? Do they know what their political stance is? Do they understand, or do they have a specific interest in a political view? Incredibly detailed. You may be thinking, well, Daryl, this is just one person. Well, you're really starting to dive into who your customer is and how they think. What's the ins and the outs? Because creating content for everyone or creating content for no one. So essentially, creating content for everyone is going to lead you to creating content from no one. I'll give an example of this. I spoke about those one-to-one mentoring sessions earlier today, and I've been very, very fortunate to help many charities and companies in the last few years, and of course, during the pandemic. And the common question I used to ask is, okay, thank you so much for telling me about your brand and your business, but tell me a little bit about your audience. Who are your customers? And they answer, well, everybody. Everybody is going to buy my socks. Everybody is going to buy my golf clubs. Everybody's going to buy my sunglasses. But it simply is not true. There could be an interest by many people, but there is going to be a specific audience for your brand, and especially for your particular service or product. So what we're then going to do is create this pen portrait, and I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. We have Nico's Pizzeria. We've got Simon, young, single, professional, in their late 20s, works a full-time in advertising, lives in Brighton, which is down south in the UK, for those who aren't UK-based, leads a very busy work and social life, has a big appetite for adventure, a keen athlete who enjoys playing football, and also goes to the local bar with his mates to watch televised TV sporting events. Let's just roll with that one. And please feel free to read through Hathaway Legal as well. But what we're trying to give you here is an idea of what a pen portrait might be for you. So when you are looking to create this pen portrait, don't ever scratch anything out. So if you are getting information from your customers, maybe you're creating surveys, maybe you're looking at your insights, maybe you're looking at analytics. Maybe Daryl, you're going a little off topic here. If you want to learn more about analytics, make sure you click in the link in the description below. It'll take you to the website and you can learn more about how you can get started with analytics to learn more about who your customers are. But coming back to these pen portraits, start to write this down. And hopefully you've got a pen and pad right now, but this is going to take a bit of time. So we don't expect you all to type this within the chat, but seriously, learning more about your customers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis is going to help you establish that tone of voice and start connecting you with your customer. The pen portrait could include your gender, the name, the age, the marital status. What is their job status? What is their hobbies? What are they interested in? What is their job title? Who is their budget owner? Who speaks for the household? Who What are their talents? What are their ambitions? What are their politics? And again, you may be thinking, Daryl, how do I get all of this information? The best way to learn more about your customers is speak to them. Any interaction you have with your customers, ask them questions. I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, what's your gender? What's your age? Not those types of questions. More on the lines of, hey, what did you do today? What do you do on the weekend? Get to know your customers as much as possible, which will lead us on to step number 3. Step number 1, defining what your brand is and what you stand for. Step number 2, defining who your audience is and learning more about them on a daily basis by creating a pen portrait. Number 3, what describes your personality of your brand or your business? Now, get those typing fingers ready, because what I would like you all to do right now is think about your brand or your organization or your charity. And I want you to think of 3 words that is going to define your brand. And these 3 words is really going to allow you to start creating content based off this brand tone of voice, which will then create consistency. So we have Nico's Pizzeria. Those 3 words are going to be charming or charm, authenticity, and family. That is what they encompass. But that is what they stand for. Then we have Hathaway Legal, which is powerful, efficient, and experienced. So far, maybe you could have been ahead of the game and you've already know exactly what I'm about to say, but we have simplified. We've got 3 words, which is expertise, integrity, and quality. 3 absolutely fantastic words to branch off on, and hopefully you've written those down. Very simple example. Haven't seen any more yet, but for those watching, what are your 3 words? Write them down or pop them into the chat. We'd love to know. Number 4 is then to create some guidelines for the words that you will and will not use. The next part is creating some sort of a guidebook for vocabulary that will regularly happen on a daily basis in order for you to stay consistent. So think of it as, how are you going to greet people? Are you going to say, hi, everybody, and welcome to today's session? Or you're going to go, how's it? Welcome to today's session. Or you're going to say, welcome to today's session. I'll give you an example from my perspective, but when you are greeting, whether it be an email, whether it be face-to-face, whether it be a presentation, how are you going to say hello? How are you going to sign off and say goodbye? How are you going to describe your products? Are you going to say they're fantastic? Are you going to say they're elegant? Are you going to say they're sophisticated? Now, these basic words and the vocabulary that you're going to use is really going to help you establish that brand tone of voice. But we have Leah, or Leah Maria, beautiful name, by the way, excellence, creativity, and friends. Beautiful, beautifully put. Now, a couple more would always be great, so pop that into the chat. But now we're going to choose those words. So again, to put this in perspective, we have Nico's Pizzeria. Nico's Pizzeria is about fresh ingredients. It's about, hi, welcome. It's about appetizing. What it's not about is Nico's Pizzeria does not want to say, welcome customer. They don't want to refer them to as customers because they are a family-orientated business. So they're all going to be patrons, or maybe as far as friends, maybe. And they're going to use the words ciao and hello, which is slightly informal, but it's a little bit more authentic because they're speaking Italian. Then we have Hathaway Legal using kind regards, excellence, and thank you, which is almost a complete opposite of Nico's Pizzeria. But when you think of it from a legal perspective, if you're looking for legal advice, you're really hoping that they communicate in a very professional manner, because there's going to be some serious information that we're going to discuss. Now, again, simple and obvious, but will really help you build that brand tone of voice. We've got Red Reef, passion, ability, and experience. Love those. We've got Pauline, clean, sustainable, and healthy. We've got Kakuya, again, nature, empowering, and wise. That is fantastic. No, Kakuya, thank you so much for coming back. Of course, we're going to remember you because you always get involved. We've got Marguerite, affordable, authentic, and self-care. We've got Jackson, quality, opportunities, and helpful. You are a phenomenal audience. Let's keep this engagement throughout today's session, and let's jump into the first part of questions. Now, I've seen lots of engagements. I've seen lots of you popping in your 3 words. So a big thank you to you. I haven't seen any questions as of yet, so hopefully you're all absorbing this information and really getting involved, which is great. But if you do have any questions, please don't be shy. Pop it into the chat. The chat. Myself and Annie would love to answer. If we don't know, hopefully we can signpost you to the right direction, but we'll be pausing again a few more times if you have any questions. Just on a side note, I'll mention this a few times afterwards, but if you were enjoying today's session and you're really gaining some value, please make sure you share this with your friends, your family, your dog, your cat. Maybe you're not your dogs and your cats, but myself, Annie, and the team would love to know your feedback. And if you'd like to give us some feedback on today's session, please go to goo.gle/digital garage feedback, and Annie will most likely be popping that link into the chat at some point during today's session. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into writing for social media. Perfect. So I got a question there from Leah Maria. What did how you speak mean again? Sorry, I was delayed. That's perfectly okay. Leah, the word in terms of how you speak, we've brought it down to those 3 words. So you may have seen a few of those wonderful others in the chat today popping in those 3 words. What we were describing is using those 3 words on the basis of how you're going to speak and how you're not going to speak. So perhaps you'll say, hello, how are you? And you will not say, what's up, how you doing? Or if you sign off an email, you could say kind regards, or you could say, thanks for coming. So think about how you're going to speak and think about eliminating the vocabulary that you don't want to be associated with and start thinking about the vocabulary that you would like to be associated with. Fantastic question. I've seen a few more questions coming in. I'll jump into those in the next Q&A, but let's jump into writing for social media, which is going to be a first quote, which is, I would have written a shorter letter, but I did not have the time. Now, I absolutely love this quote, but I'm not sure if we should attribute it to Pascal or Winston Churchill, but it really reigns true for social media. I think anyone that's had to write for social media even know from a personal point of view how hard it is to fit all that information into one post with a limited amount of characters. Now, each and every single social media platform will limit you sometimes to 160 characters or more characters, but how we are then going to capture the attention of them. Talking about attention spans, the average human attention span is now 8.25 seconds unless your interest is piqued. It is crazy to know that, let's face it, none of our attention spans have been really good. But at the point of now with social media, our attention spans have just got tons worse. So bad that, what was I saying again? Now, I'm just kidding. But when it comes to attention spans, we need to remember this every time we're writing for social media. And what we need to think about is writing for goldfish. I know this is slightly controversial, but think about what goldfish do. What they do is they swim around and they swim around and they swim around. And then when they find something or food or something, they will go straight to it. And they only have a certain attention span on that particular topic. Think of that in the world of the internet. When we're all browsing the internet, looking at different web pages, looking at social media, looking at videos, reels, TikToks, you name it, we need to get attracted and we need to retain that information. And something that's a little bit more controversial is that we need to assume that the reader will only read. That's pretty much it. Well, let me go ahead and show that for you again. We need to assume your reader will only read the first half of your sentence. Now, this may be a little bit more controversial, but it's got to assume that the reader is only going to read those words. The same applies when it comes to videos. Imagine that they're only going to watch the first 2 to 3 seconds. Hey, who knows? There could have even been somebody who joined today's session, saw me say hello, listened to the introduction, lost attention, and probably on their phone or they've gone to some other browser. Thinking about that, how are we going to retain that in the best possible way? Tons more information in the chat. Absolutely love that. But what we're going to jump into next is going to be focus on the user. Focus on the motivators rather than the pain points. Now, the golden rule that they use at Google is to focus on the user. Now, I think because of that golden rule, I personally believe that's how they've done so well. This truly means empathizing about what people are interested in and what they need. Do they want to be entertained? Do they want to learn something new? Or maybe they want to win something. Each and every different audience will have motivators and pain points. And when we're thinking about focusing on the motivators, that's hopefully how we're going to retain that information. Another way in which we can do this is focus on the benefits rather than the features. Let's say, for example, I have a smartwatch. Now, this smartwatch that I have on my wrist right now, maybe that's my product, and I would like to sell it to all of you. Let's put this in perspective. Well, let's have this new gadget watch. Let's think about the features. Well, everybody, I have this amazing smartwatch. It is waterproof up to 5 meters. It's got a 5 millimeter thick glass. It comes in black, blue, spherical interface. I'm already bored. Okay, you're explaining to me what this watch is when I'm explaining to you what it is, but how is this going to benefit you as a customer? However, if I said something on the lines of, great, we have this fantastic new smart watch. You know, you can take it swimming. Well, that's fantastic. I swim on a weekly basis. That's beneficial. I'm listening. Next up, it's smash resistant. Well, I'm always jumping into walls or clumsy. It's good to know that it's not going to smash. It's beneficial to me. Then you can choose a color to suit your personality. Oh, that sounds really personalized. So it's going to be specific for me. Last but not least, it's comfortable and stylish. All of the things that we've spoken about on the far right-hand side is going to be beneficial to your customer. Now, I'm not saying to you, all of you watching, that you're going to be selling smartwatches, but I'd like you all to think about either your product or think about your service. And with those products and services, what is the benefit to your customer? Focus on what do you value, what benefits do you have to give, and start writing those down. Hey, maybe you want to share those in the chat, but really start thinking about what those benefits are rather than just listing, oh, it's a black watch, it's waterproof. You're naming the features rather than what's going to be beneficial to them. To put this in perspective, I'll give you a couple of snapshots into some social media posts. So we have boost your CV with a free. Okay, let's look at Red for a second. Bill Red blocks. I am a job seeker. I am looking to get a job. I don't have a job, and I see boost your CV with a free. Well, the fact that I don't have a job, I don't really want to spend money. You've got my attention. However, imagine I swapped this around and I said digital marketing course first. Okay, well, there's tons of digital marketing courses out there. What makes you different? And then I said boost your CV with a free. There could be an opportunity that you could have lost a customer based off that attention span, and you haven't focused on the benefits of that customer. Next up, getting product and engineering on the same page. Product roadmap software. Again, in reverse, would simply just not attract that customer. But what you've done is you said, get a product and engineering on the same page, which is going to be useful to somebody that's in product and engineering. Last but not least, we have get a free coffee roasting kit. My apologies. When it comes to free roasting kit, you've got my attention. When you try, however, if I said to you, when you try 3 bags of our roasting coffee, basically you saying, I want you to use our coffee, but what's the benefit? Now, again, simple examples, but hopefully you can all think about your own post that you're all going to do after today's session and talk about the benefits. Hey, maybe you want to shout about the Google Digital Garage and talk about how amazing the session has been with Daryl and Anna, and you shout about it on social media. Firstly, make sure you hashtag Google Digital Garage if you decide to post, but focus on what's the benefits. Well, they offer free digital training. Potentially could help you. What we want to use is clear, simple versus complicated language. When it comes to clear and simple versus complicated language, it really comes to being back to the basics, and being back to the basics is going back to the basics. Using clear and simple language, something that's going to be reader friendly, something that's not going to strain someone's mind too much to think about what they have to read and what they have to do, considering attention spans and how we want information right now. Verse the complicated languages. So when possible, choose simple words, phrases, rather than complex ones. Now, the principles around plain language, of course, clean and complicated, but you want to structure your messages logically. Now, when I say structuring your messages logically, as I spoke about before, that very first sentence needs to capture. It's almost the hook of grabbing that customer to continue reading later. Furthermore, you have other ways to structure it in terms of headings, subheadings, lists, and tables. All of these formats on how you're going to add information is going to really help your customers digest that information. Writing short, uncomplicated sentences, choosing common everyday words. Now, I did have a common question that comes up during these sessions, which is, Daryl, if I have a specific niche, should we say, should I not be talking the terminology that this niche understands? Well, to a certain degree, yes. However, we always want to avoid jargon as much as possible because we don't want to limit your audience entirely. So I see tons of questions. I'm pretty sure Anna is on the keyboard typing all those answers into the chat, and she will pass on a couple of questions that she may not come across. Next up, I have a question for all of you, which is thinking about writing for social media. How can you cut your copy but keep the same meaning? I'll give an example. Let's say, for example, what you'd like to write on social media is like 250 characters and it's just a long paragraph. How do we now cut that copy but keep the same meaning? Pop it into the chat. Remember, there's no such thing as a silly answer or the wrong answer. It's all about ideating ideas. So how can you cut your copy? In other words, you're about to create a social post. It's too long. How can you cut it but keep the same meaning? And maybe think out the box. I like to say there is no box. So I'll hopefully get a few answers coming in very shortly before we jump into how we can handle customer complaints. And if you've ever had a complaint, stick around towards the end. We'll talk about how we can address this. So we got Carl, simplify. I love that. So how are we going to simplify that? Let's say, for example, we have 250 words. We need to limit that and simplify it to a few more short sentences. But let's say we turn 250 characters into 120 characters. Is that still going to have the same weights? Is it going to have the same meaning? We have Kakuya using synonyms, definitely. We've got Nadim summarizing your content, which you are all 100% correct. You've simplified, you've used synonyms, and you've also summarized that content. So now we've gone from 250 characters to, let's say, 100 characters. But how can we now keep the same meaning or keep the same weights? What we could do is we can add AI tools. That's really, really useful. But what we can use is pictures. We can use images and we can use videos or infographics to complement what you are saying in the post. So let's say, for example, you want to buy one, get one free, and then you're going to have a picture of what that actual one item is. So there's multiple ways in which you can do that, but I really just start to continuously think about that, thinking about attention spans are low, thinking that we are not going to read a whole paragraph, and majority of your posts need to be short, snappy, simple, and not complicated. Okay, loving the engagement so far. We've got about 23 minutes left, so thank you so much for everybody that's got involved. Let's stick with it. We're going to jump into the next part, which is going to be handling customer complaints on social media. Now, none of us want to have complaints, but let's ask the question, have you ever had a complaint? And if you did have a complaint, how did it feel? How did you answer to that complaint? Because I know I've had a few complaints, but you know what? I love complaints. Now you'd be like, Daryl, no one likes complaints. Well, I do. Do you know why? Because I like the challenge. Sometimes I've turned in some really frustrated customers that are complaining into brand advocates. How did I do that? Because I addressed them in a great manner that made them feel that they had phenomenal customer service. And now that person who's had a bad experience is now talking about the business that I used to work with and now telling other people, you need to go to this business. So sometimes these bad things can happen. Simplified, popping in those images from the previous one. So what we need to do when we're handling customer complaints on social media is avoid passive language. Rather use an active voice. This will help you write clear and concise and get straight to the point. To put this in perspective, let's say, for example, someone messaged you and said, you have terrible service. I will never use you again because your item was damaged. And you just go, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully you'll come back again soon. Very passive. Like, is that actually addressing anything? Most likely not. However, when we are really actively listening, we're then going to focus on how can you fix the problem. Focusing and acknowledging on fixing, not empty empathizing, like saying, oh, I'm sorry that happened. It won't happen again. Please come again so soon. You've basically just avoided and just forgotten everything that they've said. So don't say stuff that you don't mean. Think about how you can fix this problem. Now, why are we talking about complaints with writing for social media? Because unfortunately, it's almost inevitable that it is going to be someone that is going to be unhappy with your product or your service. What we do need to avoid is being jokey, because jokey has a time and a place, especially if money is involved. It requires a serious response. If it is resolved, if something has been handled and you've listened to what the problem is, you've resolved that problem, feel free to jump in, pop in some humor and some human elements to the actual interaction to hopefully, I suppose, bring that relationship and build up that rapport. Then sign off with a name. Now, I don't know about you, but this is the one thing that I love when somebody handles a complaint. Now, I don't complain often, but when I do complain, I complain with reason. But when I do complain and someone replies and says, well, my name is X, Y, and Z, and I'll be handling your complaint, I feel so much more at ease because somebody's almost taken responsibility of that complaint, and I feel a little bit more comfortable on how this is going to move forward. So let's give you an example. Get those typing fingers ready, because what I'd like you all to do is to answer this complaint. How would you respond to this complaint? I'm going to read it for you. While I'm reading for it, I want you to type into the chat, what would your response be? Customer to your company. Look, I ordered a mobile from your company last week, but when it arrived, it was badly damaged. When I called to complain, I was rudely told that you don't accept returns and that you need to contact the delivery company for compensation. Is this really how you treat your loyal customers? I will never buy from you again. Hopeless. That kind of hurts. Like if someone wrote that to me, I would need to take a 5-minute break, drink some coffee, get myself relaxed before I handled this. But how would you handle this? Pop into the chat. Myself and Annie would love to know. What I hope that you don't do is write, hi customer, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully it won't happen again. I'll see you again soon. Because essentially what I've done is I'm incredibly passive. I'm like, yeah, whatever, we get it, or whatever. So Sanjay, love that. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with empathy. We need to start to dissect this and understand what is it that really they're upset about. Because lots of words can be just thrown out there. We have, look, I ordered a mobile from your company last week. Okay, fantastic. They've ordered a mobile. We've gathered that. But it was damaged. Now, no one wants to receive a damaged phone. If I was in that perspective and I received a badly damaged phone when I ordered it, I'm not going to be happy either. Then when I called to complain, I was rudely told that you don't accept returns. Is that something we need to take responsibility for? Not quite sure. The one advice that I would give to everybody is that every time a complaint comes in, don't take full responsibility immediately, because it may be not your concern or the way in which you can help it. Another one from Leah, assure the customer. So we've started with empathy, then we're going to assure the customer, and then last but not least, we're going to sign off with a name. So let's go ahead and see that answer. We have your company to the customer. Hello, customer. Our sincere apologies for the inconvenience caused and poor customers you received. Now, they mentioned poor customer service is because the customer stated is that they tried to reach out, but it was handled incorrectly. We value your patronage and will launch a full investigation. If I read that, I'll be like, oh, wow, this is quite serious. They're taking it seriously. And that's generally what people want when they have complaints, is they want to be taken seriously and they want it to be handled. Next up, we want to say that why our team provided you with this misinformation and didn't treat you with the full respect that you deserve. Please contact me on my direct email and we can organize a full compensation or replacement for you. Sign off with Hannah. I feel so much at ease looking at that, thinking, okay, Hannah's dealing with this. They're doing a full investigation. They have apologized. They have said that I deserve full respect and all the respect I deserve. Okay, I like the way this is moving. So when it comes to complaints, firstly, I hope that you don't get many. Hopefully you don't get any. But if you do, think about what Sanjay said and think about what Leah has said. Start with empathy, assure the customer, and then, of course, follow up with whatever you feel is comfortable. If you're just going to give them a free giveaway or something, whatever you feel is going to be appropriate at that time. Okay, we're going to jump into the last part. We got 15 minutes left. Let's see if there's any questions. I believe Hannah has most likely answered majority of your questions. Let me double check. Oh, we have one from Kakuya. How do you choose the 3 words that encompass your brand and your products? That is a great question. And this is not something myself, Anna, or pretty much anybody can tell you. However, what I would do is think about, okay, you have a business. You are the one that can define that brand tone of voice. So the way in which you choose it could be based on many different factors. Let's say, for example, you are one person and you have a business and you're a sole trader, you're a freelancer, whatever it may be. What I would recommend is that you define your brand based on your personality. If you are fun, courageous, curious, whatever it is, think about those 3 words. However, if you are a brand and you're looking to build up a brand, maybe you're one person, but you want to branch out a little bit later, is think about what is your product and your service first and foremost. What is it that you have to offer? And then you can think about many different factors. For example, if you are a shoe company and you have amazing high heel shoes for women, let's just say, for example, those 3 words could be elegance, it could be friendliness, it could be certain aspects that's almost going to define and come aligned with your USP. I love to throw acronyms out there, but just to clarify what USP stands for is your unique selling point. Because I know there's tons of other people selling high heel shoes, but how do you differentiate yourself from those other brands? By creating a tone of voice that you would like to provide. Maybe there's one amazing high heel shoe for women, but they're all about high production and selling in bulk. However, you are all about customer service and selling a very specific shoe to a very specific person. So Kakuya, hopefully that helps you thinking about how you create your own 3 words. Another one from Neil. Which social media platform do you think would be the best to advertise your product? I want to start one and I'm trying to learn all I can before I do, but I try avoiding make mistakes. Neil, absolutely love that question. And hopefully you will come back to many, many more Google Digital Garage sessions in the future because it's no cost to you and all you can do is learn. The answer to your question simply lies with your customers. So, Neil, when it comes to the social media platform, there's many things that you can do before you jump into advertising. First and foremost, I would grow organically first, which means no paid services and no adverts and no nothing yet. But what you want to do, establish who you are as a brand and then think about who your audience is. Now, we know we spoke about earlier about the pen portrait. While you are creating a pen portrait, you can also think about creating a persona, which are very, very similar. Once you have a well-rounded idea of who your customers are, your customers will tell you which social media platforms they're on by asking them. Hey, simple survey. Where do you spend most of your time on social media? Because for, let's say for millennials, for example, they may be focused on TikTok Maybe you've got a audience that's more of a older generation, and maybe majority of those individuals are on Facebook or an older social media platform. So the answer to your question, Neil, is defining on which social media platform is based on who your customers are and where they are spending their time. Great question. Keep them coming in. And Neil, please come back to many, many more trainings. Kakwe, another one. What does a motivator and pain point mean? Okay, so when it comes to motivator and pain points, let's say, for example, I am selling this smartwatch. The motivators for, so the motivators and pain points is when I sell this watch, maybe a specific customer doesn't like someone who goes, this is the latest new gadget. It's 50 pounds, buy it. Now, sometimes that's a pain point because it's almost like you're flogging and you're just trying to get someone to buy your products. However, maybe their motivators are where you've added value and you've kind of shared a great piece of content that's added value to them. While you're doing that, you've suggested that you have a fantastic watch. So when it comes to motivators and pain points, every user, every customer will have a pain point. Another example of a pain point is if I go to a coffee shop and there's always a long queue because they're so busy, I don't want to stand in queues. I can't stand it. However, motivators for me going to a coffee shop is focus on how delicious that coffee is or how amazing the customer service is. So everyone has pain points and everyone have motivators for the things that they do. If you can find out what motivates your customers around your products and your services, start to talk about that as much as possible. Perfect. And Annie has popped in a fantastic answer in the chat there. So thank you so much, Annie, for popping that in there. We've got 10 minutes to go, everyone. Let's jump into the last part of today's session. A quick refresh. Topic number one, we spoke about how do we define your brand tone of voice. We also established what is it that you stand for. We thought about 3 words. We thought about how we're going to speak if we were a real person. We've defined our brand. Now, again, this is still the early stages. Second part of today's session was just trying to learn as much as possible about your customers by creating pen portraits. Then you could even create certain posts that you focus on motivators rather than pain points. You focus on the benefits rather than the features, regardless if that's a product or if that's a service. Now, what we want to do is how we use a couple of tools for content marketing. Now, content marketing is my favorite form of marketing, but when we are all publicly posting on the internet, whether it's from a personal capacity or for your company, but more specifically, if it's your brand, we want to make sure you are as professional as possible. Now, we spoke about those words before. Could be professional, could be friendly, could be informal. However, what we do need to try to be considerate of is we need to have great grammar and the correct spelling. So if you haven't used it already, I highly recommend you use a tool called Grammarly. Grammarly is basically going to do most of the work for you, but it's going to allow you to make sure that you are grammatically correct and, of course, make sure that you're doing spell checks as well. Now, when you are posting and you make a mistake, many times we can just edit those posts. But when you're looking to communicate as a brand, regardless of your brand, you'd like to be as professional as possible and communicate as effective as possible as well. Next up, we want to create engaging visuals. Now, I could speak about this for days and I can recommend lots and lots of different tools, but coming back to the fact that the average human attention span is close to that 8-second mark, we need to capture people's attention visually. So we can have great contents in terms of the character count that we have, but the image is going to captivate them. So whether it's going to be Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, wherever it may be, how do we create eye-catching photos? There is a great tool called Canva. For those who aren't familiar with it, Canva is a fantastic start tool for anybody to jump into, and it is a freemium tool, so it's free to a point of use, but the majority of the features are available from a free, so just go ahead and jump into Canva. Pretty sure Anna's already popped the link into the chat. Then editing the photos, you do not need to be a graphic designer. You do not need to have a lot of information, a lot of experience. Majority of the time, most of us have our smartphones that we take our photos with. These have great editing tools within them. Now, I'm not saying distort your photos, but think about the look and the feel of that particular post. And if you'd like to learn more about creating that look or feel around those photos, maybe there's lots of blue photos, lots of green colors, lots of red, whatever your colors are, we want to make sure that's consistent as possible. So if you want to build a brand online, make sure you click on the link in the description below. There's another great live training called Build Your Brand Online. Hopefully we'll see you in that. Now, with editing the photos and templates using your phone or using Canva, try to use templates that you use on a regular basis that will then allow you to be consistent. For example, if you have an image, maybe you're going to have a logo, your logo at the bottom. Maybe you're going to have a specific color, have a primary color, a secondary color, and maybe a tertiary color that you're going to use as consistent as possible. Then we're going to go ahead and jump into graphic design apps. You have Canva. You have another one which is called VSCO, which is VSCO, which is a great way to edit your photos, and many, many more. Besides from that, you also have your smartphone and a selfie stick. Now you think, oh, Daryl, this is a little bit old school. No, it's not at all. So coming back to the point of writing for social media, if you're front facing and you're putting yourself in front of the camera, selfie stick is a great way to go. If you don't have a selfie stick, do what I used to do. I used to take my phone, put it on a bookshelf, look at that camera and just start talking or taking photos and creating videos and photos. What people love to see is people smiling and people actually getting involved with their business. Let's say, for example, Daryl, well, I'm not really keen to take photos of myself and start posting about this. That's not really my thing. Then simply start taking photos of your products or your services, or maybe of your team, or maybe of your premises. So when you're looking for writing for social media, tell your customers a story. And a lot of people think, well, I don't know what content to create. Well, take a photo of yourself. If you don't like taking a photo of yourself, take a photo of what you're doing. Making coffee before work, you're walking into the door of work, you started up your computer, whatever it may be, consistent messaging on what you would like to do. But we're going to slowly but surely wrap it up. So if there's time for any questions, I don't see any questions. There's been tons of questions, there's been tons of engagement. So myself and Annie and the team would love to know what you thought about today's session. So please go to goo.gle/digital garage feedback. Myself and Annie would love to know what you thought about today's session. Anna will pop the link into the chat as she has just done. Haven't seen any other questions as of yet. What would I say are your next steps? Well, there's tons of next steps to jump into. So first and foremost, I'm going to recommend that you jump in the link in the description below. Once you get to the Google Digital Garage website, you have a plethora of information ready at your fingertips. You have online courses, and I highly recommend the certificate, which is called The Fundamentals of Digital Marketing. I've done it twice, almost 3 times, not because I'm dumb, because every time I do it, I learn something new. But go into the online courses, The Fundamentals of Digital Marketing, and you can learn at your own pace, module by module by module. On top of that, there is more online trainings, very similar to this one, on the lines of social media strategy, digital marketing strategy, how do you get started with YouTube, creating videos for YouTube? How do you get started with live streaming? And so much more great information. On top of that, there's even more certifications. So please go ahead and jump onto that website and learn as much as possible. Now, as mentioned, I know we have a little bit of an international audience today, and I'm so grateful that all of you have joined. But unfortunately, this particular one-to-one mentoring sessions are specifically for UK-based small businesses and charities within the UK. So if you are a small business or charity within the UK, please go ahead and take that down link, which is g.co/UK mentoring. For anybody from an international perspective, there is another great platform for one-to-ones. It's called Digital Boost, which will allow you to learn a little bit, set up those one-to-ones on an international scale. But with that being said, I've seen lots and lots of thank yous and some names I haven't even seen as of yet. So big, big thank you. Thank you so much from Greece. Thank you so much. Absolutely love that. Let's go ahead and wrap it up to say a big, big thank you to all of you. Please make sure you give us some feedback and shout about this to your friends, your family, your dogs, your cats. This is all free information that we're ready and waiting to help you with many more sessions, many more one-to-one sessions. But please go ahead and shout about it on social media within the context of what we're delivering writing for social media. If you love this session, take a screenshot, post it on social media. If you do decide to share it with a link, and make sure you hashtag Digital Garage or hashtag Google Digital Garage, and we'll hopefully see you in many, many more sessions in the future. Last but not least, I'd like to say thank you to Annie, our wonderful moderator, who's been typing away, answering all your questions. A big thank you to you. And most importantly, a big, huge, massive, monumental thank you to all of you, every single one of you watching here today that really got involved with the chat. It makes these sessions come to life. So without further ado, I'll say look after yourself, look after each other, and I will say bye for now, everyone.